Welcome to Design Hub. My name's Laurel Brunner, and I'm going to be talking to you today about taking the plunge into digital signage. We've heard an awful lot today about the market projections for this field and the lovely ideas that people have for developing digital signage applications. But if you're a sign and display maker who is looking for new opportunities, maybe you're considering this. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what you should be thinking about, the kind of directions you might want to go. And I should tell you right now, I don't know very much about this field at all. I'm a digital prepress, digital printing person. I know a lot about that, and I know a lot about workflow and data. But when it comes to digital signage, I'm probably as new at it as you are. I'm just one step ahead in the book, that's all. As I said, I'm Laurel Brunner. I work for a company called Digital Dots. My credentials, I'm the managing director of Digital Dots, which has been around for a number of years. We are freelance writers, journalists, and consultants. We work exclusively in the prepress area. I also sit on TC 130, which is the ISO committee that develops standards for the graphic arts. So digital signage is something actually that comes within our remit. So we have looked at it a little because we deal with graphics technology. I'm a convener of one of the working groups as well, the environmental group. So I have an interest in following the way the signage industry grows, whether we stick with recyclable substrates or whether we stick with or move towards technologies that don't involve any kind of sustainable resource, but that might be more flexible for the market. I also blog every week on the Verdigris project. You may see those blogs. They're all over the world now. Digital Dots, as I've said, somebody described us like that, so I've always used it. A collection of like-minded pixies. We don't take ourselves too seriously, but we take our work very seriously. We're consultants, as I say. We're journalists. Some of our clients include people like Statoil and IKEA in Scandinavia. We've done work for most of the major newspapers in the UK and several in America. As journalists, we write for our own journal, but we also syndicate our copy to other magazines around the world. We also audit for the ISO 12647 standard, as well as ISO 9001. I'm sure you know 9001, it's the quality management standard. 12647 is the offset quality control standard for offset printing, and it's a standard that has become a benchmark for other sectors as well as offset printing. We publish a journal called Spindrift. We have a global readership through various licensing arrangements. We don't take any advertising. All of our income from Spindrift is either through syndication or through subscribers. And we founded an environmental initiative that has become reasonably well known around the world. So that's me. And about you. You deal in a digital world. You might not like it. You might consider yourselves to be sign makers or producers of print, but your world is a digital one. Whether it's prepress, whether it's the data that describes your colors that you use, whether it's data's in a database for variable data, whatever it happens to be, you live in a digital world. Color is fundamental to everything you do, but it's more complex. You need to produce it more regularly. You need to have the flexibility to use different substrates and ensure common color appearance. All of these types of things are quite straightforward on a digital device, on a digital display device. They're much harder in print because you're dealing with materials and the way light interacts with those materials. You also need to have more transmedia color consistency and data consistency. By this I mean that you need to be able to deliver materials for your customers that are consistent in terms of the way brand colors are rendered, where the content and the format appear consistently across devices. You're also having to produce the unexpected, which is partly, I suppose, why you're here. You might be thinking about doing digital signage as part of the new expectation for your customers. We face tremendously demanding expectations in the market. As Sean gave you earlier, a whole load of different examples of the way messages can be delivered. Time. It used to be that a newspaper needed hours to get to press. Now it's minutes. You can get newspaper pages on press within less than 10 minutes. The same thing is true in every other graphic arts sector. we can deliver data very, very quickly, and we understand about delivering it quickly. We also understand about quality control. The best printers in the world are very, very good at making sure that their customers are never disappointed, and the sign and display market is no different. Cost. This is the problem in the market, cost. So many companies have undermined their profitability by selling on cost. I think the sign and display market is no different. But with all of these changes that we've seen, the rise of digital technology, the development and emergence of new digital applications, this creates new opportunities for any business. It takes understanding, it takes being aware of what you can do with your data's customer. Your customer's data. What you can do with the material that they ask you to produce. Whether you can render it as signs and display work, whether it's going to be rendered in a magazine page or in a billboard or on a website or in any other environment. If you understand how the data works, you have an understanding of the type of opportunities that you can pursue for your customers. So we're seeing a very close link now between print and digital media. Everyone looks at the internet as being the source of a threat, I suppose, but it's also the thing that is driving new business. So web-to-print systems that allow customers to upload different types of data files. They're not necessarily confined anymore with how that data gets delivered. So we have the tools and the technology to link both print applications and digital media applications, such as digital signage. We can use print as the catalyst. A company that we have had some dealings with decided that they wanted to use the web as a means of getting people to buy more groceries. So the idea was that you put posters up at railway stations and bus stations and in airports so that somebody could scan a QR code with their phone to order what was on the poster. And it would be bread, milk, orange juice, croissant for breakfast or whatever. It might be a pizza, it might be a ready meal or something. They scan the code, the order is immediately processed, and the materials are, the food is delivered to their home before they actually get there, or roughly when they get there. So this is a very nice link between printing and digital media. So print becomes the catalyst. Variable data and customized messages. This is probably the most important area to understand if you're thinking of getting into digital signage. It's all very well talking about digital glass and showboards in retail outlets and all the wonderful things that you can do with digital signage, but if you don't get the data right, you're wasting your time. This is where you gain the most benefit from it, is in understanding how to customize messages and how to manage data so that, for example, if in a cinema, the largest number of people looking at a digital sign happens to be, I don't know, people over 50 on a Thursday afternoon and teenagers on a Friday evening, you can customize the message so that your customer gets their message to the people they want to reach and they can be sure of some sort of a response. It's not a question of technology. We have plenty of technology to do this. Whether it's a digital workflow, whether it's the digital signs themselves, whether it's monitors or screens, whether it's managing color, managing data, whatever it is, we have the technology. You need to understand how networks work, though, as well, because if you're looking into setting up a complex series of signs that you have to manage across lots of different devices, you need to understand how they are networked together and what the limitations are of a particular network or scenario that you're using. Again, data management is the most important thing. If you're new to data management, if you're new to digital workflows, you need to get with the program. You need to start understanding how you manage your data far more effectively than you might have done in the past. If you've already got a digital workflow in place, you're already partway there, though. And market access. How do you sell your services as a digital signage provider to the customers that you've already got? This isn't impossible, but it takes investment and time. So, this is what I've learned about digital signage recently. Do you see them as a complement or a replacement to an existing technology. The example I gave earlier about the grocery store that put these posters in railway stations, they were using digital technology in a very kind of complementary way. Would you expect to do the same sort of thing with digital signs as well, with some sort of sensor included in them, some sort of giant touchscreen? How might that work? What kind of application would you use for that? If you're selling advertising on train schedules, maybe a digital solution is quite good, because people can choose their route by touching the screen and pressing where they want to go and finding out the next train time. They might also see the same information in a printed document that they can carry with them. So look at this kind of complementarity that is there. The most important thing, and I think this is what matters most, when you look at future projections of markets, the most important dimension that is very difficult to capture is what motivates people to do these things. In any question, in any problem, any conflict, the most important question to answer is why. So why would your customer want to have posters and digital signs alongside each other? Why would they want a campaign that goes across media and tries to build transmedia links between the different channels? Understand the objectives, and then the rest of it starts to become clearer to you. You can research the technology, you can look at the resources you've already got, you can leverage your existing investments and your existing knowledge. Most of the time it's brand awareness. A lot of these big digital signage projects are by big brand owners who just want to hit every channel. For example, BMW or British Airways or Credit Suisse or whoever it happens to be. They want to keep their brand in the public's mind's eye, and they use every channel imaginable. If you have a customer who's looking for digital signage solutions, who doesn't necessarily have a very, very big brand, you're going to come up with something a little bit different than you might come up with for British Airways or BMW or whoever. Understand what kind of response they're expecting to get. Are they expecting just to get people looking at their ads, looking at their posters, or are they actually expecting a response? And if so, you need to make sure you can provide the resources or the means for capturing that response, because in a digital environment you can do that. We can see how many hits there are on websites, for example. You can see how many downloads there are of product information, or how many orders there are that are made on the web. It's very important to understand this part of an objective. Is the work that you're being asked to do part of a broader campaign that involves all sorts of other media? If so, to what extent is print involved? Because print is the hardest thing to get right. If you can get it right in CMYK, you can get it right in RGB, which is what all of these digital signs rely on. You can manage the color because you're already doing it in a much more difficult environment than the digital world presents. So what are the benefits? When I started doing this slide, I ended up with stick with print. The benefits are interesting. The benefits are that it's dynamic information. It's constantly changing, which means that you can constantly refresh your messages so that your customers, whatever their message happens to be, will always have something interesting on an hour-by-hour or minute-by-minute basis for the people viewing those signs. Again, this comes down to the context in which they're being viewed, the expectations of your customer and what they want from this project. All of it has to be carefully defined. So dynamic information, we already do this in the graphic arts. We do variable data printing, and we do it extremely well. If you consider things like variable data transactional work, we're very good at managing data to produce variable content on the fly. We can do this in the digital world as well. How you measure the response, though, is a trickier thing. You need to look at the type of technology you're using for your signs, digital signs I mean, in order to see how you can capture responses. There are huge revenue opportunities, particularly for retailers. I mentioned food, but it also applies in the clothing sector, in any kind of fast-moving consumer goods, as Sean already mentioned. there are tremendous opportunities for retailers who can keep refreshing their messages and make sure that they link that to a response. I think Sean gave the example of Red Bull, that if you play a game and you get enough points on the game, you get a free tin of Red Bull. I'm not sure that that's really what brand owners want. They want you to buy the Red Bull, not get it for free. So look to the revenue that's coming out of these types of projects. Some of them are really amazing and they're really exciting and interesting, but if they don't translate into a real return for your client, then they're just interesting technological and creative exercises. Advertising is the most obvious and the most popular route to a great fortune these days. If we look at what's happening with Facebook or Twitter, and Google, they are all based on the premise that they can deliver audience to their advertisers. It's much more important than just delivering audience, because everything in life is about stimulation and response. The response part is what you want from your project. Special offers, you can link posters and digital signage to encourage people to take up special offers that are only available on the website or that are only available with coupons, all this type of thing. There are lots of ways of doing it. The key thing is to understand why you're doing it and what you actually can help them to deliver. So what does it take? Again, this is not my field, so I've taken a rather pragmatic approach, and I've done a little bit of research to find out who you should be talking to. In my view, the most important thing is the people that you have in your business. The salespeople, your production people, your ability to work with creative people within your customer's supply chain. It comes down, most important of all, to the people. They need to understand how IT works. They need to understand the language of the web, so they need to be familiar with all the various open source softwares that you can use. They need to understand networking, because if somebody's asking you to do a fairly complicated project and you have to network it, you need to make sure you know how this works. And variable data software management. In the transactional market, we use APS, what is it called? I can't remember. There's a particular data format that we use, and in the commercial graphic arts market, we use PDF-VT. These are two incompatible data formats. However, you probably need to look at a bit of both if you're going to do something really clever in the digital signage market, because both will apply. It takes creativity. Everything that you see in digital signage and in conventional signage is successful because it's creative and interesting, whether it's the IBM logo, whether it's some very clever campaign at a horse show with a clothing company's logo plastered all over the place. Whatever it happens to be, it comes down to creativity. And it takes investment. You can't do this for cheap. Fortunately, printers are quite good at spending €1 million a time on a press or a wide format digital device. This is the type of investment level that is probably beyond what you would want to do for digital signage. They're much cheaper than that. But you should still be prepared to take a long-term view and be prepared to invest to some extent in what you're trying to do, because it's about how you evolve your business. It can be substantial. Most important of all, it can be complicated. You're going to have to deal with a knowledge curve of some sort. You're going to have to deal with upgrading the existing equipment and systems that you use. You're going to have to buy additional equipment, and you're going to have to understand how to manage that equipment. And this is all culturally different from what you've been doing. You need to decide about location, so that's a whole other dimension on what you do with digital signage. How do you put digital signs in a railway station? Who do you talk to? Is it your responsibility? Is it the client's? And how much is a few square meters of space in a shop? These are difficult questions that you have to start asking in order to get the right answers. Ideally, people want high traffic sites, such as airports, such as railway stations, such as busy junctions in a city. In London, for example, the whole of the Cromwell Road is a series of digital billboards, and those locations are incredibly expensive because they are appealing to all of the people leaving London in the rush hour, and they're sitting there with nothing to do except look at the digital signage. You need to think about the software that you use to manage all of those locations. Do you try and manage it yourself? Do you work with a third party who hosts your solutions? How do you go about doing this? These are all things to think about. And the network connectivity. Are you depending on Wi-Fi? Are you depending on people having internet access? Or are you depending on the telephone networks? These are all different considerations to make. So where do you start? Look at the system requirements that you've got. That means audit your own workflow. To what extent is your workflow fully digitized already and fully automated? To what extent do you have the capacity within that workflow to deliver files to lots of different types of location in a reliable way? And by system, I also mean the approvals process. To what extent does your system involve your clients? To what extent is it bidirectional, or is it just them sending you stuff and you print it and deliver it? You need to know more about display screens. I don't know how many of you here are printers, but I wouldn't be at all surprised even if you were all printers, that only about 10% of you calibrate your color monitors. This is very important. If you don't calibrate your monitors, you can't be sure that the colors are right. What's it take to calibrate these remote display screens? How do you make sure that a whole bunch of digital signs all deliver color in the same way? And how do you make sure that that color matches what you print for your customer? You need to understand how you manage content. If you're delivering multiple messages throughout the course of the day, according to the time of day, you need to manage the content in a database of some sort, or you need to manage your connections to your customers and use their databases. This is very important. Network connections, as I said, how are you going to do it? Are you doing it over the telephone system? Are you doing it through Wi-Fi? Are you doing it through an internet connection? Where do you start? The installation procedures. To what extent are you going to be responsible for installing and supporting these devices? To what extent are you going to subcontract? What happens when something goes wrong? How quickly can you get to one of your installations to fix it if some of the LEDs go out, or if the data delivery isn't right, or if it loses a connection to whatever network you have? Because this is management of a project. It's not like when you install a print project and it just sits there until you take it down again. Digital displays require, to get the most out of them, that you manage the process for the whole time that digital system is up and running. Maintenance, as I said, if it goes wrong, what do you do? What do you do if it gets vandalized? How do you protect it from the weather? So these are the software developers that I've come across. Some very, very large options. Intel is very big on this in terms of delivering content management, and so is Cisco. Cisco is a very obvious one because they have such a huge investment in the networking business. There's hundreds and hundreds of little developers who are scurrying to get into this marketplace. They've read the projections that say this massive growth and huge revenues, etc., etc. So there's loads and loads of little developers. The ones that I thought were the most interesting were Dynamax and Broadsign. I think Broadsign is actually here at this show, and they're very, very clever people. They understand how to manage the software and the content, how to make sure it gets delivered properly, and how to manage the whole project. Or you could do it yourself. This is not an option I would recommend, just because if you're not really up to speed with how digital data works and how digital displays work, you could find yourself with a very expensive project. There is OpenSplash, which is an open source software that you can download from the internet. Do that. Download it, have a look at it, play with it, and then go and talk to somebody who knows what they're doing. For hardware, again, we've got the very large options. NEC is probably one of the biggest players in this field. They make everything from bus shelter panels through to enormous video walls, and they are very capable, very good at managing the quality of the devices, the color quality, the color management, all of that. Tremendously good products. Panasonic is probably their biggest competitor. Also extremely good. They all make loads of these different things in loads of different configurations. And the not so large ones. This is a little Taiwanese company that we recently came across. They make color screens, calibrated color screens for the graphic arts. They also make slide projectors and large video display systems, but they're very small. Again, DIY, don't do it. Don't even try. There's plenty of people who know what they're doing. It's a bit like me deciding to become a rocket scientist or a basketball player. That would be the better analogy. So, if you do decide to do it yourself, you've got to think in terms of the design of the type of display system you want to have, how you're going to build it, how you're going to install it, and how you're going to maintain it. I would recommend you don't do this. But thank you very much for your attention. If anyone's got any questions, I'm here, I'll try and answer them.